We're talking about cross-border growth. Before we dive in, I got a quick question for the audience over here. Raise your hand if you are shipping internationally, Americas to the rest of the world or rest of the world to Americas. We've got a few hands. Keep it raised if you have over 20% of your revenue coming from those other regions. Fewer hands. All right. Well, this is the opportunity. We have an awesome group of panelists over here to talk about cross-border growth. Let's start with a couple of intros. We have Alex from Passport and Josue from Elf. Alex, let's start with you. Let's do a couple of quick intros.
Sure.
Who you are, what your company does, and let's do like a 30-second why cross-border logistics is more complex than most people realize.
Sure, yeah. Hey, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for hosting this. Great to be here with ShipBob. So I'm Alex Yancher. I'm the founder and CEO of Passport. Big picture, we help brands go global. And international is very complex because you have to solve for so many things all at one time. You have to solve for the shipping. You have to solve for the duty and tax calculation. You have to solve for complicated regulatory requirements around the world. You have to solve for localization, languages, payments, all of those things. And there's over 150 countries. And there's multiple channels. There's direct to consumer. There's Amazon. There's TikTok Shop now. So very, very complicated to wrangle all of that.
Okay. A lot more complexity than most people realize. There's a couple of words from you to get us going here.
Yeah, well, thank you as well for inviting me. I work for Elf Beauty within the operations team, so I lead transformation of their distribution projects and the IT infrastructure for those projects, as well as some of the planning that we do for inventory allocation. And for us, it's much more complicated because just a tracking link is incredibly difficult. There's so many handoffs. There's VAT considerations. Where do you create a legal entity versus where do you just do VAT registrations? Not to mention the decision of A/B testing on what's the pricing strategy. Do you add charges for delivery, or is that built into the cost? All of those local considerations that you don't know in the beginning, and also you don't have the critical scale to really go and research all of that on your own. So using a partner like we've used Passport has been really helpful, but it's much more complicated than you can imagine. The world's bigger than you can imagine. There's not a lot of 300 million person countries either, markets, so you've got a lot of disparity as you're trying to expand.
Okay. Both of you are touching on some key points. We're going to try and peel this for the audience over here. Alex, let's start with you again. Like, from your perspective, where is cross-border heading right now? And with Passport, like, what was that founding belief that led to sort of like the moment that got Passport going?
Totally. So, all of those complicated things that I just mentioned, our vision at Passport is to wrangle them and make it super, super easy for a brand like Elf to go global and to take advantage of all the consumers around the world. And the thing about international is that the complexity, it keeps moving. So it's a moving target. So you have new regulations coming online every single year, sometimes every single month, as we saw last year. And there's new opportunities for growth. Like I think I mentioned earlier, TikTok Shop is a new entrant. So many things changing, and our vision at Passport is to make it just a no-brainer for brands to be able to go global.
Great. Really helpful. Let's talk about that go global, Josue, with Elf. Like, you guys are like this incredible powerhouse beauty brand operating globally now. What was that international journey look like for y'all? And when you look back, like, what were some hard lessons that you had to learn along the way?
Well, we've learned a lot. Elf is very big in retail, and so we have the benefit that a lot of brands don't have, where we already have a retail presence. We already have an anchor retailer in the UK and the EU that's permitted us to do that. But the complexity on the sales tax side is probably one of the biggest ones. There's exemptions, de minimis is going away in some countries. There's surcharges being added in other countries. There's delivery area things like what carrier can deliver to a post office. That's been really difficult for us. But for the most part, it's trying to make a strategic decision to say, let's consolidate to the decisions that we're good at. Let's do the inventory deployment to get within region, and then let's work through strategic partners who can help us really handle the carrier network, because we frankly don't have time to go and negotiate with every single parcel carrier in every one of those countries. That's been one of the growing pains. Let's stop trying to do that and let's work through those strategic partners instead.
Great. Let's actually continue peeling over here because we have a lot of like brands and merchants in this room, Josue, who are thinking about international. And it's always like getting started, trying to get momentum that matters. What were like some of the first steps that y'all had to start looking into and start executing? And what were some of the lessons in those first few steps?
On the D2C side, like the e-commerce side, I would say it's really defining where are your consumers. You may be attracted, for example, not to pick on a country, but you may be attracted to Germany because of the population, because of the wealth. But if your followers are already in Spain, if you're already getting inquiries in Spain, go where the market is. Don't put yourself in like the southwest corner or something like that, right? Don't do something where it might be difficult to expand from, but go where the consumers are. Start there, get your foothold, expand strategically. And again, we're in a bit of a different position because we have such a large retail business that those units can basically justify us deploying inventory into warehouses in the EU, whereas a brand getting started might not have that ability. You might have to, say, work out of the UK into those areas, or start distributing from the US into those areas, build up that market, and then work with a partner to help you actually get a physical footprint there.
Yeah. Got it. Very helpful. Sounds like don't just show up, plant a flag, and just hope things just work out.
Yeah.
Be thoughtful, be strategic, think about your choices, and make some good deliberate moves.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, Alex, you speak with brands, I suspect, every day, and given the nature of your business, you probably see some wins, but you also see many mistakes. What are some mistakes you see brands making? And if you think about the world of Passport, like how do you avoid them?
Yeah, so I'll start with this. Every brand is already global day one. I encourage every brand here to go to their Google Analytics and see where their traffic is coming from. And the mistake is not monetizing it, because I wouldn't be surprised if every brand here has at least double digits traffic from countries around the world, and some really easy to serve countries like Canada, where everybody speaks English. It's a pretty wealthy country. And frankly, some misconceptions are out there of what you can ship, how you can ship. Some brands, I still run into this issue a lot, where brands seem to think sometimes that you have to change your packaging. Oh, I'm going into the Canada market, I have to change my packaging, I have to change the labels. There's different label requirements. That is true, but it's true for B2B. It's true if you want to carry products on the shelves in a Canada, say, supermarket or store. It's not true if you want to do D2C. Countries have this thing called personal exemption, okay? Personal use exemptions, which means you can ship a B2C shipment and not have to change any of your packaging. So I would say it's just a mistake not to monetize the traffic that you're already getting.
Okay. But they're also dealing with like this constant barrage of like changing rules on them. And they're thinking of international, they're thinking of new rules. I mean, I don't think there's a dull moment when it comes to global trade.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the changes the EU is doing is like removing the de minimis exemption from July 1. And obviously, like you said, US tariffs, there's never a dull moment. There's always something changing. Yeah. And it's sort of like a moving target for merchants and brands in this room. What's actually new? What do you think brands in this room should be paying attention to that, will be important as they think about like going international?
Yeah, I think there's two big macro trends happening that I'll share with the audience here that might be relevant for the audience. So, and you touched on both of them. So the first one is tariffs. Liberation Day. This was a little bit over a year ago, and there's just broad, I call it politicization politicization of supply chain and tariffs. So just this past week, Trump announced that he's going to implement tariffs on French wine if France doesn't lower the taxes on the US tech giants, okay? It's hard to predict. If you're a merchant that sells wine, how do you know what's going to happen in the world of politics? Another example that comes to mind, this was maybe like 8 months ago, where Trump threatened to put a extra 50% tariff on Indian-made goods because India was buying oil from Russia. So how do you manufacture in India then? How do you predict what your cost structure is going to be? And the cat is out of the bag. You know, this is a unique administration, of course, when it comes to trade and tariffs, but the cat's out of the bag, and new precedents have been set in regards to tariffs. So that's one big macro change. The other one that you mentioned, G2, is about the de minimis in Europe going away starting July 1st. Okay. This is just a coincidence that we happen to have this fulfilled, a few weeks away from this happening. But this process of countries around the world removing their de minimis has been in process for, I want to say, multiple decades at this point. It's just now we're starting to finally see those decades of legislation come due. So the U.S. removed the de minimis. Sure. We used to have an $800 de minimis. We removed ours. Australia removed their de minimis a few years back for GST at least. UK and EU actually already removed their de minimis, but for VAT. And now this is the next shoe to fall, which is these countries are starting to remove their de minimis for duties, different than VAT, because you have to pay duties on things under the de minimis in UK and EU. So they're removing their duty de minimis starting July. That's EU. And UK is coming in, I think it's like 2 or 3 years, the UK de minimis is going away. So this is just a big trend of countries trying to level the playing field for their local industries. The real target for these trade rules that are changing are the low-cost vendors like Shein and Temu in China, but caught in the crossfire are US-based brands that also happen to have things that they sell that are under the 150 euro de minimis as well.
Okay. There's a lot to keep in mind here, and as I think about it, like if you're a brand like actually doing global and you have to track all of these changes, like there's a lot over there. I'm curious, Jose, like you guys must have like a war room set up to deal with all these changes. Like what happens on the ground? How do you adapt to when all these rules are changing fairly constantly?
Well, one of the big changes that we've had to do is kind of regionalization, right? So the UK used to service our EU business. That's moving into the EU itself proper. We've entities we're setting up as well. I know that's not something everyone can take advantage of, but getting within that region, so at least the fulfillment, the parcel shipment is originating within
more local.
Exactly, within that area. I think there's also like a €1 surcharge per unit shipped in that's happening as well that we'll be foregoing. And then finding the good, honestly, getting advice from really, really great partners. Like that's part of it too. We consult with, we have accounting firms, consulting firms, we have shipping experts, we have 3PL partners. We talk to everybody, get the download on what's happening and try to stay ahead. And we don't stay still, right? We try to take a look at our distribution network, make sure that it still makes sense for where we are today, and try to game out what could happen if one of our key assumptions changes in the future, and just have a plan.
Okay. Yeah. I think my takeaway is like this is just the reality of global trade, but given the size of the market worldwide and the opportunity, don't let it slow you down. Like to your point, Jose, work with partners, work with advisors, and figure out the right path forward. I think my other takeaway is I better go get all my French wine. No? All right. Well, I'll keep that in mind. Thanks for that tip, Alex.
I'll visit you on delivery day.
Yeah. That is true.
Yeah.
Might have to use ShipBob for that. Well, let's talk about like this whole thing of like going international. I speak with brands on a regular basis, and I have a group of them on this side who are like, I'm going to just bolt it on. And then on this side, I have a smaller group that's like, I'm going to make it a first-class citizen. I'm going to make it a core part of my business. Alex, like from your observation experience, like what does this look like when it is best in class? It's not like just bolt on, I'll think about it when I have time, but it's actually something that they're focused from a revenue standpoint.
Yeah. Let me throw some numbers at you to set the context. There's 8.5 billion people in the world. There's 1.5 billion English speakers in the world, and there's 350 million people in the US. A few more numbers. 90% of Instagram MOUs are outside the US. 80% of Google
90%
searches.
of Instagram users are outside the US.
That's right, yeah.
Wow.
What I said. Yeah. 80% of Google searches are outside of the US, okay? Now, how does that translate if the way you're describing, you're gonna make it more than just a bolt-on, but you're gonna make it a core part of your experience? You have companies like Nike that have 60% of their revenue outside of the US. And you could just see it based on the numbers. These are just the raw numbers. Most of the world's buying power, by far, multiple orders of magnitude of the world's buying power is outside of the US. Most of the eyeballs, most of the English speakers are outside of the US. So you just have to show your non-US consumers some love. You have to localize your experience. You have to give them a very strong value prop, just like you do here in the US. ShipBob promise, but for the rest of the world. If that happens, you can have most of your sales outside of the US. That's just what the numbers are showing.
Super helpful. But I still, as I think about that practicality of like bolt-on versus like best of breed and really focused on it as a core thing, what was that like for Elf, Josue? Like, was it like you swung right into best of breed, or what were like some of the lessons that helped you get to where you are today in international?
The lessons are that we'll be most relevant when we're actually talking to that audience versus that audience is just happens to catch our message. Remaining relevant to them with the way that we fulfill to them, the way that we price. For us, relevancy is also how fast we can deliver to them. That's a big thing, right? Because we are not ubiquitous in the EU, for instance, right? We're getting there, but we're not as ubiquitous as we are in the US. So for many of our consumers there, the fastest way to get their Elf product is through e-commerce. So we have to be much more mindful about it, and to be honest, we're not 100% there yet. Another part for us is if we think back to 2000, the US was about 30% of global GDP. We're down to about 25% of global GDP. The global economy has grown, meaning that spending power is also getting more distributed across the globe. So there are opportunities for us to continue to make money, right? If you continue to compound at 20%, at some point you're going to saturate whatever market you're in. So international markets are important for our continued expansion, and we've had to learn that Europe is not a monolith, right? There may be a common trading zone, but you need to speak to each of those individual audiences a bit differently, a bit more relevantly. So it's been a huge lever for us. I think that we'll continue to grow in the US, but we'll see much faster growth internationally as well.
Makes sense. To me, it sounds like if you want to be best of breed, like, don't look at it just sort of like, here's my US revenue, and I'm just going to tag along this little thing on this growth curve. You almost like have your US as a growth curve. You might have Europe as under the growth curve. Someday you might have Australia as under the growth curve. But the point being, you should almost see it as like distinct growth opportunities for the overall business.
If I could add one more thing.
Go for it.
Just my observation as well. The popularity of US media kind of really helps you become global because so many people follow our celebrities, follow our accounts, speak English, etc. You may have planted seeds you didn't even really know about. So that's where, going back to your statistics on where your Instagram followers, where your site views coming from, et cetera. Like those nuggets will help you understand like a significant portion of your audience is probably outside of your home market.
Makes sense. And speaking of the audience as well, like ultimately to me, we would love to do everything, but the only person that matters at the end of the day is the customer.
Yeah.
And I think about like sort of like this customer experience. Going global is important, but then you still almost like have to think local. You have to think about the customer experience. How do you make it seamless? So that doesn't feel like you just showed up and you're operating with like this one thing that you're basically taking across the whole globe. What did that look like at Elf, Jose? Like when it comes to like almost like the seamlessness of the customer experience? Because I sense like when you don't have that great customer experience, you see a lot of traffic, but then you see very little conversion.
Yeah. Oh man. That's been a challenge, to be honest. I don't know that we've completely figured it out. We're getting better at it. We're dedicating resources to try to improve that. Yeah, I wish I had a better answer.
Okay. How did you think about like countries? Like were there things that you had to do differently from one country to the other?
From one country to the other, like some of the stuff that Alex mentioned in terms of pricing, delivery, in terms of the way that we add VAT. For us, one of our biggest competitor on the e-commerce side is the success that we've had on Amazon. And so one of the key insights we have is the better experience we can deliver on our own e-commerce platforms, the more likely we are to retain that customer into that platform, which means we retain the relationship. The bigger the lifetime value of that customer is. And so we've just been trying to get better and better at that. But it is iterative for us, and we're trying to get better at it.
Okay. Learn from insights, make adjustments, keep iterating.
Yeah.
Alex, what about you? Like you're probably seeing this in real time. What are like things that you observe work for merchants when they think about like that seamlessness experience? You're still a global company, but you think and execute locally.
Yeah. So there's actually a finite list of things that you can do to be quote unquote localized in a particular market. So what is that? Local currencies, local payment methods, language to the extent, in Canada they have French, I guess, but to the extent that that's a market that speaks a different language than English, so that. Local imagery, so you don't want to show in your ads, the Empire State Building or something like that. You want to show, if in France, like Eiffel Tower, that kind of thing. By the way, no excuse, people. AI can do all that for you. It could swap out Eiffel Tower for Empire State. So AI certainly made things like that much easier, but that's something. Little language things, like in the UK they say slacks, not pants, and somebody will catch that. They'll read pants and they know what it is, but it'll just distract them and it's going to hurt conversion rate and it's not going to feel like a localized experience. So those types of things. Okay, and then the other two big move the needle things that I would say are the shipping value prop. If it's cross-border, and we do cross-border, but I mean, I'll be the first to admit, offering a 9 business day transit time, it's not the best.
Absolutely.
If that's all you have to offer, then do it. It's just going to impact you in the conversion rate. So be it. Might as well do that than nothing. But of course, you want to be able to offer a faster transit time, something that people in the UK are used to, like 2 days. And then returns. That's the other big one. That's the other big one where international consumers, they just don't get the same value prop as it relates to returns as as a local business in, say, the UK can offer consumers. So that's the other big piece. Those are the things that,
Sure.
You put them all together, and if you can solve for that, you have a quote-unquote localized experience and a localized value prop, and your conversion rate will be as good as if you were a French entrepreneur starting a French.com.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. In my previous life, we went to Germany, and we thought we will be smart and only offer USD. And that didn't help on the conversion side. the marketing team also, like again, this was in a past lifetime when we didn't have AI. We basically took our English content and we translated it. It didn't work in Germany, but then the moment we took it and we localized it, like actually giving it the local feel, the conversion rate just went up. Now with AI, obviously, like a lot of that is much more easier to do. Speaking of AI, it's hard not to leave a room without someone screaming AI to you. And there's a lot of like amazing, compelling AI use cases, but there's also some that feel like, wow, like that just seems like hype. I'm curious with both of you, like, you know, between Passport and Elf, like, what are y'all seeing with AI? Like, what are like use cases where y'all like, you should, as a brand should absolutely be leaning on, and maybe even like places where you're pulling back from an AI standpoint?
I go first?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so one win. We have a very complicated, we run an international shipping network, right? Middle mile, last mile, air freight. We use 5 different last mile carriers in Canada. I mean, it's very, very complicated. And we have an AI agent that sits on top of our network and separates the signal from noise and bubbles up issues before our customers ever see it. And it's been incredible for us. We used to, sometimes, I hate to say it, but find out the hard way. You know, a customer would say, hey, you know, for this particular region, packages aren't being delivered, and we find out it's because there's some like forest fire in Australia or something like that. And we find out because customers are complaining. Now that doesn't happen anymore. Now our AI agent captures it, understands in its AI way, understands that this is signal and not noise, and bubbles it up, and we're able to communicate more proactively to our customers. So that's a win. I'll also tell you a loss. So we had a person who is from a low-cost region, low-cost employment region, maybe had salary of like, I don't know, $20,000 a year or something like that. And this person handled our insurance claims on our carriers, okay? And we replaced that person with AI, okay? So remember that price? We paid $20,000 annual salary. The AI is now costing us $25,000. So we ended up spending more money on the AI because of the high expensive tokens. You know,
sure.
People, you know, they forget how expensive these tokens are. So we ended up going back to human and replaced AI with a human, which happened to be cheaper. So, you know, that was a place where we actually ended up pulling back.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Real quick, token maxing seems to be a thing these days. How do businesses or our audience aware think about that AI spend? Like, how are you thinking about it?
I mean, we were token maxing, you know, and we started to blow through our budgets, and I had to rein it in, to be honest. And we started to go into the open source models and the Chinese models, and basically saved like 75% over like a 1-week period. So now I think we're in a much better place. Yeah.
Okay, but it sounds like be clear on the use cases. That first use case is very compelling.
Totally.
Josue, what about you? Like, how are y'all at Elf thinking about AI? Like, what's a win that you have leaned into, and maybe a loss, like you decided there's a better approach?
In terms of a win, it's been probably around inventory planning. So you can tie up a lot of cash over purchasing on your tail SKUs, right? And you can miss out on a lot of revenue opportunities by not going deep enough on your head SKUs. So applying AI to help us make those decisions be better, be more cash efficient with that, and also take signals from certain areas like marketing spend or marketing plans or influencer engagements, so that we have a 1, 2, 3 week early heads up that, hey, there's an activity that's going to take that forecast up. That's been that's one of the applications we're really going after.
Yeah.
Let's see, we've been cautious in applying it. You know, we have a lot of we have authorized sources that we're allowed to use, right? Always keeping an eye out on security, making sure that confidential information doesn't get out. And a lot of the business users as well only utilize it for essentially word processing or cleaning up an email. So we make sure we run it through a layer to make sure that, hey, if it's just a quick kind of language thing, we run it through a more efficient, more cost-effective source than if it were heavy data processing or creating an API, that kind of thing.
Okay, really helpful. Hopefully the audience is picking up on some use cases or places where they can lean on when it comes to AI. I know we got a couple of minutes left here. Let's do a quick lightning round and we can wrap it up. Let's go with you, Alex, first. Like, what's one metric every brand going international should be tracking that many aren't or most aren't?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say contribution margin by country, because it could be wildly different.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Josue?
For us, it's always time in transit, right? We value that relationship with the customer. The more we can be reliable, the faster we can deliver, the more likely we are to keep that relationship versus losing it to an Amazon or, who is a great partner, by the way, an Amazon or another platform. So time in transit's huge for us.
Okay. To me, it sounds like don't just sort of like treat it as one big blob. Like think about it by country, make a choice where you want to truly invest. Think about contribution margin, think about transit time, and all of that will matter. All right, final closer question. One country or market that's massively underrated for DTC brands right now?
Poland?
Poland?
Poland.
Okay.
I'll go a different side of the world. UAE, KSA, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Israel, the Middle East, actually excellent markets. A lot of expats, a lot of affinity for US brands, very wealthy regions, and been in the news recently, but things I think are settling down there, and I think that those are going to be great markets for people.
Okay. Okay. Very different.
Yeah, different
geos over there between Poland and then, the Middle East in some ways, which is another reminder. It's a big world out there.
Totally.
It's an exciting space, but to win, you need to be strategic and you need to make good choices. Think about best of breed as opposed to bolting stuff on. And I think the worst mistake one can make is like do everything at the same time. Make a choice, show a win, and then use that win and the learnings to go into other countries. Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex and Jose. We really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.